The first thing I heard was my dog screaming. Not barking, not growling, screaming. I dropped the grocery bags from my hands and ran toward the driveway. My heart stopped when I saw my service dog Max lying on the pavement while a black SUV was parked just inches away from him. And standing beside that SUV was the woman who had been trying to get rid of us for months. Finally, she said with a cold smile, maybe now you'll understand that animal doesn't belong in this neighborhood. I looked at her in disbelief. You hit my service dog? She didn't even look sorry. Instead, she crossed her arms and pointed at the HOA sign near my house. This community has standards. That dog ruins the appearance of the street. I warned you. My hands started shaking, but I forced myself to stay calm. Because Max wasn't just a pet. He was the reason I could live a normal life. After my years serving in the military, loud noises, crowded places, and sudden panic attacks had become things I struggled with every day. Max was trained to sense when something was wrong before I even knew it myself. He saved me more times than I could count. And now the woman in front of me had just tried to take him away. Her name was Linda Carter, the president of our HOA. For almost a year, she had acted like she owned every house, every sidewalk, and every person inside our neighborhood. She had fined families for small things, threatened elderly residents, and once even told a new couple they needed permission before painting their own front door. But with me, it was personal, because I refused to bow down to her. The first time Linda saw Max wearing his service vest, she walked straight to my door and said, "That dog is causing complaints. Remove him or you'll regret it." I calmly explained that Max was a legally protected service dog. She laughed. You people always have an excuse? Those words stayed in my mind. Not because they hurt me, but because I realized Linda didn't care about rules. She cared about power. Now, standing over my injured dog, she looked more confident than ever. I already called the HOA security team, she said. They're coming to handle this. I stared at her. Handle what? The fact that you hit my dog? She rolled her eyes. You should be careful with your accusations. I have witnesses. That was the moment I noticed something strange. There were no neighbors outside. No witnesses. No one. Just Linda and her SUV. But then she smiled and said something that made my blood run cold. You really think anyone will believe you over me? I looked down at Max, who slowly opened his eyes and tried to stand. That was when I made a decision. I stopped arguing. I stopped trying to prove myself to someone who had already decided I was guilty. Instead, I reached into my pocket and pressed one button on my phone. Because Linda didn't know something very important. My house had security cameras covering every angle of my property, and they had recorded everything. My house had security cameras covering every angle of my property, and they had recorded everything. But the video showed something even worse than I expected. Something Linda never thought anyone would discover, because she didn't just hit my service dog. She had made a mistake that could destroy her entire HOA career. And when the police arrived, Linda was about to learn that the person she thought was powerless was the one person she should have never challenged. The police arrived 10 minutes later, and Linda's confident smile disappeared the moment she saw who stepped out of the patrol car. Officer Ramirez looked at me, then at Max, then at Linda. Who called this in? Linda immediately stepped forward. I did. This man's aggressive dog attacked my vehicle. I want him removed from the neighborhood. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. But before I could say anything, Officer Ramirez raised his hand. Ma'am, we already saw the footage. The color left Linda's face. What footage? I unlocked my phone and showed the video from my security cameras. The recording was clear. It showed Linda driving her SUV toward Max while he was sitting beside my driveway. It showed her stopping, looking directly at him, and moving closer instead of slowing down. It also showed something else. She had stepped out of her vehicle before the impact and moved the camera on my front porch away from her car. She wasn't trying to hide an accident. She was trying to hide what she planned. The officer watched the video twice. Then he looked at Linda. Do you understand that this is not just a neighborhood disagreement? Linda's confidence started falling apart. I was just trying to protect the community. Officer Ramirez shook his head. No, you were targeting a protected service animal. That was the moment everything changed. The investigation uncovered months of complaints against Linda. Former neighbors came forward with stories about fake fines, threats, and abuse of power. Then came the biggest surprise. The HOA documents Linda had been using to control people had never been approved correctly. She had been acting as president without proper authority for almost a year. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She was pretending to own it. A few weeks later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. The same people Linda had bullied for years stood together. The elderly couple she threatened. The family she fined over a small garden. The new homeowners she tried to scare away. Everyone had something to say. And this time, Linda had no power to silence them. The final vote removed her from the HOA board permanently. She also faced legal consequences for what she did to Max. But the thing that mattered most to me was seeing Max recover. A month later, he was running across the grass again, chasing his favorite ball like nothing ever happened. One evening, a neighbor asked me why I didn't just leave after everything Linda did. I looked at Max and smiled. Because people like her win when good people walk away. I spent years serving this country, believing that freedom was something worth protecting. And I learned something important. Sometimes the biggest threats to your rights don't come from strangers. Sometimes they come from people who think a title gives them power over everyone else. Linda thought she could take away my voice. She thought she could scare me off my own property. She thought my service dog made me weak. But she made one mistake. She judged the wrong person. And in the end, the woman who tried to remove my service dog from the neighborhood became the one person who was removed from it forever.